Okay, when you look at this document, you are going to realize that you have some things underlined in red, which means that these are spelling errors. So in order to fix this, there's two ways you can do it. You can either go into the Review tab, and in the Proofing group, you can find the button here called Spelling and Grammar, or you can go directly to those words and right-click on them. So Leo's last name, it's underlined in red even though it's spelled correctly. What that means, though, is that that word is not in Word's dictionary. Okay, that's what it means. So you may have words that are actually spelled correctly, like this case, but it's just not a part of the dictionary. So we're going to right-click on his last name, and we're just simply going to tell it to ignore it. And notice it gets rid of the red. Same thing with our initials, that they think it's a spelling issue. So we're going to go ahead and ignore it. Notice now it turns to a line underlined in blue. This means a grammar issue. The reason that this is a grammar issue is because the R is no longer capitalized. Okay, so we're going to go ahead again and right-click and tell it to ignore it. And I'm going to go ahead and save those changes. Okay, on over to page 19 is where we're going to adjust some paragraph spacing. So the first paragraph spacing we're going to take care of here is Jayla's address. When you look at Jayla's address, you should notice that there are a large amount of white space in between these lines. Okay, it doesn't really look like an address. So we're going to highlight the first two lines of the three-lined address. So just the first two. And we're going to go into our Home tab. And again, this is over on page 20. So we're going to go into our Home tab. And in the ribbon, we're going to locate the paragraph group. And in that paragraph group, we are going to locate our line and spacing button. And the option that we are going to choose in our line and spacing button is that option of remove space after paragraph. Now, I haven't clicked on it yet, but you can preview that in our document and notice how that looks a lot nicer. It looks more like an address because we don't have that big gap in between those lines. So we're going to go ahead and click on remove space after paragraph, and there is our address. We're also going to fix the same issue here down by on step 7 on page 20. It says to double click your initials, so it's highlighted. And again, we're going to remove the space after our initials here before the word enclosure. We don't need this big gap here. So again, we're going to go back into our Home tab, back into our paragraph group, back into our line and spacing button, and we're going to remove space after paragraphs again, just to get rid of that gap. Over on page 21, we're going to learn how to do the same thing as far as removing that gap, but by using a different technique. So they have asked us to include Leo's job title at this vintage record business. So we're going to click at the end of Leo's last name. And instead of pressing enter, which will give us this big gap, instead of doing that, this time we are going to add what we call a manual line break. So to add a manual line break, we're going to press and hold down the Shift key and enter. So Shift and enter at the same time. And that gives us a manual line break. And what a manual line break does is notice it puts our insertion point directly underneath his name. We don't have that big gap anymore going on like the enter key does. And this is where we can go ahead and type in his job title, which is a purchasing manager. Now notice that my initials did go back to blue. So I'm just going to go ahead and tell it again to ignore it. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and save I work. Okay, over on page 23, this is where we're going to work with margins. So we are going to be printing this letter on pre-printed letterhead paper. So if we actually refer back in your book to page 9, at the top of page 9, you're going to see a yellow bubble with Villa Rio Records business information. And we want our letter to be printed on that letterhead paper. But if we were to hit print right now, our date and probably Jayla's address will be over the top of that information. So we need to bump the start of our document down. In order to do that, we are going to create a custom margin. So I'm back on page 24. It says to go into the page layout tab. And in the page setup group, we're going to locate the button called margins. At the bottom of this button is an option for custom margins. And we are going to drop the top margin. So currently it's at 1 inch. We're going to drop it to 2.5 inches. We're going to go ahead and hit the OK button. And you're going to notice now that we have a lot of room here now for that letterhead information so that this is no longer printed over the top of it. The bottom of page 25, I want you to print it. There's no need for you to print this activity. because you are going to turn it into me electronically. So here's how you're going to turn it into me. We're going to go ahead and save this activity. And remember, we have saved it as Brooks letter. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and close out of it. And just as a reminder, that file that we saved is right here in that folder called Intro to Computers on our desktop, Brooks letter. Okay, so we're going to go to Canvas. Okay, let me save that. Sorry. So in Canvas, we're going to go to our modules. And in our modules, we're going to go down to Word Module 1, which is what we're working on here. And what we just did is we created the file called Word Module 1 module Brooks letter. That's the file we just created. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that assignment. And when I click on that assignment, you are going to notice that there is an option that says that you can submit it. So I know that my screen doesn't match yours, obviously, because mine's the instructors and yours is the student here. But up here towards the top, you're going to find an option called Submit. You can go ahead and click on Submit. And then your next screen is going to ask you the file that you want to upload. Down towards the bottom, and again, this is on your screen, not mine, but down towards the bottom, there's going to be a button here called Browse. You're going to click on Browse, and you're going to locate the file you want to upload to turn into me for grading. So you'll locate that file called Brooks letter, which again is in your Intro to Computers folder on your desktop called Brooks letter. So you're going to navigate out to find that. You're going to go ahead and hit upload, I believe, and then you're going to go ahead, I think, and hit the word submit. And then now you've turned in that file for me to grade. All right, now to go back, we are now ready to go back to our books and create our second document today. So just as a reminder, if I go back to the modules and back into Word Module 1, into my module directions, we have just completed the Brooks letter. We're now ready to start the envelopes.